Michał Szlaga lives and works on the site of the shipyard of Gdansk in Poland. It's a huge complex. Buildings no longer in use are set to be demolished. But Szlaga is not a shipbuilder. He tried that 6 years ago to make money after he finished art school. He trained as a ship painter. He lasted 8 days. Szlaga is a professional photographer, and since 2003, he has documented what he says is a place, a livelihood, and a spirit which is disappearing.
I think this place is so important for our country, to the point where we should have a national project allowing us to commit this kind of place to record, since it's disappearing. Looking at all this from the inside, I said to myself, I'm going to take care of it, to tell people who don't know it about this chapter of history.
Szlaga admitted he couldn't handle the grueling hours and work. It made him admire the shipyard workers even more. And of course it helps when you're documenting workers of perhaps the world's most famous shipyard, the birthplace of the legendary Solidarity movement. It was here in 1980 that Lech Wałęsa, an electrician, led 17,000 workers on a series of strikes. Strikes they won, and which led to the collapse of communism in Poland and Eastern Europe. But the collapse of communism also led to the shipyard's bankruptcy and privatization. The latter has been far from successful. And today these working-class heroes are few in numbers. Now there are less than 3,000. Last year only 5 ships were built, a far cry from the 35 a year during the 1970s. Since joining the EU in 2004, Poland has poured close to 3 billion euros in aid to keep its shipyards afloat. But under strict EU competition rules, governments cannot give aid to ailing companies without coming up with a viable restructuring plan. And last November, the European Commission ruled that 2 of the main shipyards, Gdynia and Szczecin, had to close down by the end of May. The yards were losing too much money. Gdansk, the most famous of the 3, has been given more time. It also has a Ukrainian investor. But in April, Solidarity leaders were back in action. They've accused Warsaw of hiding facts regarding the public aid. And more worrisome, another slipway for the ships has been ordered closed.
This decision could trigger closing the site definitively. The investor could pull out. We're afraid the whole workforce could be laid off. That was the case for Gdynia and Szczecin. We don't agree with that. We've convoked a protest committee. We're going to defend the yard and ask for an explanation of why false information was given to the European Commission about public state aid.
While Gdansk still has a fighting chance, its sister shipyard Gdynia has run out of options. As of June 1st, these 4,000 shipbuilders will be fired. Janusz Stejiński has been here since 1984. The Polish government is offering compensation pay and training programs to find new work. Stejiński says he's too old to change. He hopes Solidarity can somehow still save the shipyard.
We're working. Things are going well. It has always been like that, working. Work comes first. Even when things were bad, our unions took care of it. Solidarity always said, it's up to you to work, it's up to us to negotiate. That's how it always was.
But can the world's most famous trade union fight against the EU's principles of free trade and fair competition? Dariusz Adamski is a former electrician who fought alongside a more famous one in 1980. He says Poland should have negotiated better for its shipyards before joining the EU.
As far as the situation in Poland is concerned, it has to be said that Poland had its 5 minutes say at the time it joined the European Union, when the framework of negotiation would have allowed Poland to ask for transition periods for Polish shipbuilding, to leave more time to restructure and look for investors.
In Gdansk, the presence of foreign companies underlines growing investment in Poland. And while Poland's shipyards have suffered from EU-acquired reforms, the rest of the country has thrived from EU membership. A recent report claims that Poland, along with Slovakia, are the only EU states whose economies are still growing despite the international financial crisis. And for the city's deputy mayor, he believes the shipyard industry will continue, but on a smaller and more efficient scale.
Polish public opinion is worried about the yards. People disagree with what's happening, but it's a natural process. In the same way that French farmers protest against lower subsidies for what they do. And in the same way steel in Britain and the people it employs were against restructuring that sector. It happens everywhere in Europe.
In Gdansk, tourists flock to visit what is called the jewel of the Baltic Sea. But they also come for its more recent history, that of the shipyards in Solidarity. Exhibitions like this one tell the story of Solidarity's fight and the workers who sacrificed their lives to create a democratic Poland. Yet for one of Solidarity's founding members, yesterday's heroes must face up to today's economic reality.
I took part in the strikes and underground organizations, and I think it's enough to have a monument for those who fought. It's enough to have exhibitions like this one, which commemorate the workers. As for the yard, we should take an economic approach, not historic. If the yards produce ships, good. If there's no demand, too bad. You have to accept it.
But accepting that Poland's most famous shipyard no longer has its place in a post-EU membership environment is a bitter pill to swallow for those who not only fought for Solidarity's creation, but who are still working at the shipyard. Zbigniew Stefanski has been here since 1978.
We have sacrificed everything, nearly everything, to save this yard, and now they tell us it's not profitable anymore, and we have to leave. In my particular case, everyone would be angry. We can't let ourselves lose this work, because who would take us back?
Stefanski says he's determined to fight once again for his job. And behind his camera, Michał Szlaga sees not one, but many stories along Poland's road to political and economic freedom.
Telling the story about this place's decline also means telling the story of a lot of other places like this in Poland, which have disappeared or are in the process of disappearing. But no one talks about them because they're not as famous as the Gdansk shipyard.